Hey, it's Nathan. So I'm kicking off a different type of Tech and Brews chats where I tackle tech jargon and break it down into understandable context. Before we dive really deep into the tech jargon, I want to tackle the idea of microservices. The applications that you see every day, the ones on your phone, the ones on your computer, the ones on the websites, they're all architected in a certain way. Using microservices is one way to build or architect an application. So let's start by imagining a website. You log on to Amazon.com, you're looking to buy some stuff. On the front page, you'll see features like a banner, you have the search bar, maybe you have the product, all the different kind of products that you see, like a product catalog, and then let's add in the trusty cart. So let's look at two different things, how you build it traditionally and how you would build it using microservices. In the traditional sense, you would take each of these features and they would all be built dependent on one another. What I mean by that is they're all interconnected, right? And they're all sharing one underlying data store or database in this sense. This means that anytime you have to work on it, maintain it, make it bigger, you have to approach the app as one giant mass. So now let's look at how you would build the application using microservices. You still have all the same features over here, search bar, banner, product catalog, and your trusty cart, except instead of being dependent on one another, they talk to each other using standard protocol, which is like different kinds of programming languages. So since they're just talking to each other like this, it is furthermore exaggerated with each being connected to its own specific data store or database. Whenever you need to work on it, you can work on each specific part as it needs help or as you need to scale or build it. So, if we look at it from face value, traditional architecture seems a lot more simple than microservices, so why would anyone want to build an application in this complex way? There's an online developer library called Pact that has a great honeycomb analogy to explain microservices and why they're worth it. In the real world, bees build honeycomb by aligning and creating each individual hexagonal cell at a time. They start small and use different materials to build each cell. Furthermore, construction is based on what materials are available at the time of building, so they can continue to build each cell when time and resources allow. As they continue to build, this repetitive pattern forms strong bonds in between the cells and creates a larger overall unit. Like the microservices here, each cell in the honeycomb is independent yet coupled to each one in the same way. As they continue to add on new cells, the honeycomb can scale for the growth in a very sustainable and organic way. Damage to one cell doesn't impact the other cells, so they can reconstruct and work on each cell in a way that they need to. Now, taking that same microservices example as if you are the honeybee, but you have to build your hive or application in the traditional sense. Let's just say your application or hive becomes the place to be, and there is just bees showing up and you're having a big party, right? However, your party gets real big and they all start clustering around one certain little area, all right? Let's just say, for this instance, that area happens to be the search function room of your beehive, and they're just filling it up. In the traditional architecture of how you build an app, or with a monolithic style hive, you would have to address the increase of this usage by expanding servers all across your entire application. This is pretty much the equivalent of doubling the size of your entire hive just to accommodate for this increase of usage in this one little room in your hive. So you can see how if your hive was actually microservice cell oriented, you could just increase the support on this one cell where your search function is housed rather than expand all the servers or all the resources across your entire hive. So if you decide to commit to a microservices style architecture, each microservice should connect to its own database and not have a shared one. So if you're using best practices when you're building out your microservices oriented architecture, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And what I mean by that is that if you have all your eggs in one basket, meaning one shared data store, if this goes down, you lose everything. As opposed to having your eggs in multiple baskets, if one basket goes down, you don't lose all your eggs or your microservices. What this does is it just reduces risk by spreading your microservices across different databases and data stores. Now, there are some companies that subscribe to a microservices style architecture and choose to keep all their microservices in one shared data store, or in that sense, put all their eggs in one basket. But at that point, you're straying away from best practices, and it's not really truly microservices at that point. So we're talking a lot about databases and a lot about data stores and how microservice architecture relates to it. And this kind of comes into the world that I live in, which is MongoDB. MongoDB is a document database commonly used for microservice-oriented architectures because of its ability to make data really easy and fast to work with. What I mean by this is that the developers can use it intuitively to spend less time working on getting the database working and spend more time building out the features and apps that they're working on. Third, it's really flexible in the sense that if you need to make a change to your different kinds of microservices or build up more resources around certain usage increased areas or something else, you can do that flexibly. And last but not least, MongoDB is very versatile. And what I mean by versatile is that it can be a Swiss Army knife with all the different kinds of data that you can work with, not being just constrained to a few different types that can only work with that database. So that is microservices in a nutshell. I'm making future videos focused on the how of microservices. So think about things like container technology, like Docker for instance, or orchestration frameworks. A really common one is Kubernetes. So be on the lookout for those in the future. That's all I have for now. Comment, like, and share if this was helpful. This board was super fun to work with. It was a big project, but I'm super glad I got to use it. Drop a question below of any questions you may have. And last but not least, the brew of the week is Garrison Brothers. Fun fact. Garrison Brothers was the first bourbon to be made in Texas. Everyone thinks that bourbon can only be made in Kentucky, but it's not true. U.S. borders. So, guys, cheers. I will see you next week.